I knew something was wrong the day he followed me to the mailbox. It was just a few steps outside our house, but he came out anyway. He didn't say anything. He just stood there and watched me. His arms were crossed. His eyes never moved. I looked at him and smiled, but he didn't smile back. He asked, "Why are you taking so long?" I held the letters in my hand and said, "I was just looking through them." He didn't answer. He just turned and walked back inside. I followed him. I didn't want to make him upset. My name is Elena. I am 30 years old. I live in a small house in the USA. I have been married to Tomas for 2 years. People think we are a happy couple. When they see us on the street, we are walking close. We hold hands. We smile. They think we are in love. But they don't know the truth. They don't see what happens inside our home. They don't see how he looks at me. They don't hear his voice when he is angry. They don't know he watches everything I do. In the beginning, Tomas was kind. He sent me messages every morning. He brought me flowers. He asked about my day. He made me feel special. He always wanted to be close to me. He said, "I feel safe when you are near." I liked that. I thought he loved me. We got married quickly. I didn't think too much. I just felt lucky. I wanted to believe in a strong love. I wanted to be a good wife. But after we got married, things started to change. At first, the changes were small. He didn't like me wearing makeup. He said, "You look better without it." So I stopped. Then he said my dresses were too short. He said, "Other men can see your legs." I wanted to make him happy, so I stopped wearing them. Then he didn't like me meeting my friends. "They talk too much," he said. "They don't understand marriage." I told him, "They are my friends. They don't mean harm." But he didn't listen. He just got quiet. And when Tomas was quiet, it was worse than when he was angry. I remember one evening when Julia called me. Julia is my best friend. We grew up together. We used to talk every day. That day, I was laughing on the phone. Tomas walked into the room and looked at me. I stopped laughing. He waited until I finished the call. Then he asked, "What was so funny?" I told him it was just a joke. He said, "Do you always laugh like that with her?" I said, "It's nothing. Just silly talk." But I saw his eyes. He didn't believe me. That night, he didn't speak to me. He turned off the lights and went to sleep without a word. Little by little, I changed. I stopped laughing on the phone. I stopped calling my friends. I stayed home all the time. I cooked, I cleaned, I sat next to Tomas. I waited for him to ask me questions, and I gave him the answers he wanted to hear. "Where did you go today?" he would ask. "Nowhere," I said. "Just the store." He always asked what I bought, how long I stayed, and who I saw. If I smiled too much, he asked why. If I wore a new blouse, He looked at me strange. "Who are you dressing up for?" he would say. I used to say, "For you." But after some time, I said nothing. At work, my manager said I looked tired. She said, "You used to smile more." I told her I was fine. But inside, I was not fine. Inside, I was always worried. I checked the clock before I left work. If I came home late, Tomas would notice. He always noticed. One time, I was 10 minutes late because I missed the bus. When I walked in, he was waiting by the window. "What took so long?" he asked. I said, "The bus was slow." He looked at me and said nothing. Then he walked away. Tomas always says he loves me. Every night he says, "I want to protect you." But I don't feel safe. I feel small. I feel like a child in my own home. I don't speak much anymore. I think a lot, but I don't say the words out loud. I wake up, make coffee, pack his lunch, clean the house, and stay quiet. I watch the window. I look at the sky. Sometimes I think about my old life, before marriage. I had friends. I went for walks. I laughed. I made plans. But now, I do none of those things. Tomas says he loves me, but he never asks how I feel. He never says, "Are you happy?" He just says, "Where are you going?" Or "Who are you talking to?" "Why are you wearing that?" I want to tell him, love is not this. But I don't. I stay quiet. I make dinner. I smile. I sit next to him on the couch. I watch shows I don't like. I laugh when he laughs. I pretend. One night I was washing the dishes. He came up behind me and said, "You didn't answer my call earlier." I told him I didn't hear the phone. He said, "I called twice." I said sorry. He stood there for a moment, then walked away. That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about the phone. I kept thinking about the way he looked at me. I kept thinking, why do I feel scared all the time? But I don't want to leave. I don't know why. Maybe I still want to believe this is love. Maybe I think it will change. Maybe I think he will see me again. The real me. Or maybe I'm just afraid of what comes next. Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. The next morning, Tomas was already awake when I opened my eyes. He was sitting at the edge of the bed, looking at his phone. I turned slowly and said, "Good morning." He didn't look at me. He just said, "You sleep too long." I didn't answer. I stood up and walked to the kitchen. I made coffee. I made toast. I placed a plate on the table for him. He sat down and started eating. After a few minutes, he asked, "What are you doing today?" I said, "Just cleaning the house. Maybe going to the store." He asked, "Which store?" I looked at him. "Just the one on Main Street." He nodded, then said, "Don't stay too long." I left the house after cleaning the kitchen and folding the laundry. It was a sunny day. The street was quiet. I walked slowly. I wanted to feel the sun on my face. I wanted to feel something that was not fear. In the store, I looked at the bread and milk, but I didn't buy anything right away. I was just standing there when I heard someone call my name. It was Julia. She looked surprised to see me. "Elena," she said with a smile. "It's been so long." I smiled too, but I felt nervous. I looked around like someone might see me. "Hi," I said. "Yes, it's been a while." Julia asked how I was. I said I was fine. I always said that. She looked at me and said, "You don't look fine." I laughed a little. "I'm just tired." She touched my arm. "You can call me any time, you know." I nodded, but I knew I wouldn't call. When I got home, Tomas was sitting in the living room. He didn't say anything when I came in. I put the bags down and took off my shoes. Then he asked, "Why were you gone so long?" I said, "I ran into Julia." He looked up. "What did you talk about?" I said, "Nothing. Just small things." He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "Don't forget who your real family is." I said nothing. I just stood there, quiet. He turned his eyes back to the TV, and I went to the kitchen. That night, I lay in bed next to him. He was already asleep. I stared at the ceiling. I listened to the soft sound of his breathing. I thought about Julia's face. I thought about her eyes when she said I didn't look fine. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. I didn't want to wake him. I turned my body to face the window. The moonlight was coming through the curtains. I watched it and tried to feel calm, but I didn't feel calm. I felt small and lost. The next week was quiet. Tomas didn't say much. He was working late. He came home, ate dinner, watched TV, and went to sleep. I cleaned the house, cooked meals, and folded clothes. I didn't go out unless I had to. I didn't call Julia. I didn't call anyone. I stayed home and did my part. I thought maybe if I was a good wife, he would love me again. Maybe he would smile like he used to. Maybe he would ask how I was feeling, but he didn't. He just watched what I did and checked what I said. One day, I was cleaning the bedroom when I heard a sound. I turned and saw Tomas standing in the door. I smiled and said, "You're home early." He didn't smile back. He looked around the room. Then he asked, "What were you doing?" I said, "Just cleaning." He stepped inside and picked up a photo from the table. It was a picture of us from 2 years ago. We were smiling. I had my arm around his waist. We looked happy. He stared at the photo for a moment, then put it back down. "Do you miss those days?" he asked. I didn't know what to say. I nodded slowly. "Yes," I said. "Sometimes He said nothing more and walked away. That evening he was quiet again, but something felt different. He looked at me longer. His words were softer. He asked if the food was warm enough. He asked if I wanted to watch something special on TV. I was confused. I didn't know what to say. I just said, "I'm fine." He nodded. "Good," he said. "I want you to be happy." I smiled a little, but my stomach felt tight. I didn't trust the change. I didn't understand it. Later that night, we sat on the couch. He reached for my hand. He held it gently. He said, "I know I'm not easy." I looked at him. It was the first time he ever said that. "I only do this because I care," he said. "I don't want to lose you." I felt my throat get tight. I wanted to ask, "Why do you think love is watching me all the time?" But I didn't. I just said, "I know." He kissed my hand. "You're the only one I trust," he said. I nodded again. I didn't speak. When he went to sleep, I stayed on the couch. I looked at the window. The room was dark. I thought about his words. I thought about how he said he cared. I asked myself, is this what care looks like? I didn't know the answer. I only knew how I felt. And I felt tired. I felt like I was always careful. Careful with my words. Careful with my time. Careful with my face. Even when I was happy, I had to hide it. Even when I was sad, I had to smile. A few days later, Julia sent me a message. It said, "Thinking of you. Hope you're okay." I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't reply. I was afraid Tomas might see it. I erased the message. Then I felt sorry. Julia was kind. She was just trying to help. But in this house, even kindness felt dangerous. That night, Tomas came home late. He was in a good mood. He brought me a small cake. He said, "I passed by your favorite bakery." I smiled. "Thank you," I said. I wanted to believe it meant something. I wanted to believe we were okay. But deep down, I felt a weight. A feeling that something was always wrong. Even in quiet moments, I felt like I was holding my breath. I don't know when I stopped being myself. I don't know the exact day. But I remember what it felt like falling without knowing where the ground is, like living but not fully alive, like walking through a dream you cannot wake from. But I still stayed. I didn't pack my things. I didn't walk away. I stayed in the house. I cooked. I cleaned. I answered his questions. I smiled when I needed to. I did all the things a wife should do. But inside, something was different. Something had started to break. Not loud, not fast, but slowly, quietly, like water dripping on stone. It was a cold morning. The sky was gray and the house was quiet. Tomas had already left for work. I stood in the kitchen holding my coffee. I looked out the window. The street was still. I could hear the soft sound of a dog barking far away. I didn't move. I just stood there for a long time. Something inside me felt heavy. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just felt tired in a way I couldn't explain. I cleaned the kitchen slowly. I washed the dishes, even though there weren't many. I wiped the table twice. I folded a towel that didn't need folding. I moved through the house like a ghost. My body was busy, but my mind was far away. I kept thinking about my life. I thought about the woman I used to be. I used to sing when I cleaned. I used to dance in the kitchen when no one was watching. Now, I didn't sing. I didn't dance. I moved quietly, like someone might be listening. At lunch, I didn't feel hungry. I sat at the table with a small sandwich and a glass of water. I looked at the chair across from me. It was empty. I thought about all the times Tomas sat there, all the questions, all the long looks, all the silence. I didn't hate him. I didn't even feel angry. I just felt nothing, like something important had gone missing, but I didn't know when or how. Later that day, I walked to the store. I wore a coat and a scarf, even though it wasn't that cold. I wanted to feel covered. I wanted to feel small. I walked past a flower shop. The smell of roses came through the open door. It reminded me of the early days when Tomas brought me flowers. I stopped walking for a moment. I looked at the red and yellow petals. They looked soft and warm. A small part of me wanted to buy one. Just one flower. Just to remember what it felt like. But I didn't. When I got home, Tomas was already back. He was sitting on the couch watching the news. He looked at me as I came in. He asked, "Where were you?" I said, "Just the store." He asked, "Why so long?" I said, "I walked slowly." He didn't speak again. I took off my coat and went to the kitchen. I washed my hands. I made dinner. I didn't ask if he wanted anything special. I just made soup and bread. He ate it in silence. I didn't ask how his day was. I didn't want to hear about it. I just wanted the evening to pass. That night, I stood in the shower longer than usual. The water was warm and soft. I closed my eyes. I let the water touch my face. I thought about nothing and everything at the same time. I wanted to feel clean, like I could wash away the heavy feeling in my chest. But the water didn't help. I stepped out, dried myself, and looked at my face in the mirror. My eyes looked older. My skin looked pale. I didn't see the woman I used to be. When I went to bed, Tomas was already there. He was reading something on his phone. I lay down beside him. He didn't say goodnight. I didn't say it either. I turned to face the wall. I listened to the quiet sound of the screen as he scrolled. I stared at the wall for a long time. I thought, this is my life now. Not loud, not violent, but still, it hurt. The next day, something strange happened. Tomas brought me a small box. He said, "I saw this in a store and thought of you." Inside was a necklace. It was gold-colored with a small heart. I looked at it and smiled. "Thank you," I said. He seemed pleased. He said, "You should wear it. It suits you." I put it on. He kissed my forehead. I smiled again, but something inside me was quiet. This gift did not change the way I felt. It did not take away the long days or the heavy silence. It was just a small thing in a big story. Later that week, I ran into Julia again. This time, she stopped me before I could walk away. She said, "Elena, please, just give me 5 minutes." I nodded. We sat on a bench outside the store. She looked at me with soft eyes. She said, "You don't have to tell me everything. I just want you to know I'm here. I miss you." I felt something in my throat. My eyes were wet, but I didn't cry. I looked down at my hands. I said, "I miss me too." She reached for my hand and held it. We sat there for a moment without words. Then I stood up and said, "I have to go." She nodded. "Okay, but I'll be here." That night, I told Tomas I saw Julia. He didn't get angry. He just said, "Be careful. People talk too much." I said, "We didn't talk long." He nodded and turned away. I looked at the back of his head. For the first time, I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel small. I just felt done. Not with him. Not with the house. But with pretending. The days after that were quiet. I cooked, I cleaned, I smiled when I had to. I wore the necklace he gave me. I answered his questions. I stayed where I was, but something inside me had changed. I no longer waited for his love. I no longer hoped for his care. I no longer believed that love was control. I did not fight. I did not leave. But I knew now. I knew what this was. And I knew what it was not. Tomas said he loved me. But love is not fear. Love is not question. Love is not watching every move. I didn't say these words out loud. I didn't have to. I just knew them inside. That was enough for me now.